Hello and welcome to this code review of the expert advisor Neuronirvaman for MT4. My name is Pedro Espina. I will be your presenter. Dr. Masoud Sajjadi is playing the role of mentor and product owner. We're going to start this code review by taking a look at the class diagram. The first thing to note is that there are two dependencies for the Neuronirvaman expert advisor. These are two indicators. The next thing that I would like to do is I would like to show you the state chart diagram, which gives us an overview of what the code is doing. I'll also show you the input variables. So the code relies on this function called supervisor, and the supervisor returns an integer. If the integer is negative, that's an indicator that we have to do a sell order. The orders have no expiration date, so either the execution price of the order, which is passed as parameters, has to appear, or there has to be a request to cancel them. And on the other hand, if the supervisor is a positive number, then that's a signal for us to place a buy order. The next thing that I like to do is I like to go and take a look at the code and look at the sequence diagram as we go through the code. So here's the code for Neuronirvaman. These are the input variables again. So what we'll do is we'll go to the start function here. So the first thing that it does is it tries to get the current time. Then it asks if a trade is allowed. If a trade is not allowed, then it just waits. So let's take a look at what that looks like. There's a time function that returns. Then it asks if the trade is allowed. If it's not allowed, then you do this again function, which is really just a wait until the trade is allowed. Okay, so once we're able to trade, the first thing that we do is we process all the pending orders. So we're not going to send any new orders until all the pending orders are processed. And that's what this loop is doing here. So this orders total returns a total number of the orders that are pending, and then you process each one. And the order select just helps you pick out the orders, and you have to match the symbol of the chart that you care about. In our case, we're doing the Euro USD. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the sequence diagram. This is this part of the sequence diagram. So after we're done with that, then we call our supervisor function, which has three inner functions inside of it. So the supervisor function, so now let's look at the code. So now we're at the point where we're calling the supervisor function. The return value of the supervisor function is called it's called the perceptron, and basically if it's positive, then we're in the scenario where we do a buy operation, and if it's negative, we're in the scenario where we do a sell operation. So inside the supervisor, there's three other functions that are being called, three perceptrons. So the third perceptron is responsible for identifying the type of market, whether it's a bullish or a bearish market. And the second perceptron is responsible for learning how to trade short positions or how to deal with short positions. And the first perceptron, it's responsible for the long position. So when you a short position means that you sell hoping that the price will fall, and a long position means that you buy hoping that the price will rise. So here's the code of the third perceptron, and it's really just computing this Laguerre RSI, which and then it's using the parameter distance to set a threshold value for the computation. So if you look down here at the return value, the Laguerre RSI is going to return a value either positive or negative, and that's based on whether you should buy or sell. There's the reason it's called plus DI is because it's using this. So now we'll take a look at the Laguerre code. So basically, RSI is a percentage sum of the deltas of the closes up divided by all the closes over the observation period. And the LRSI, which is the Laguerre RSI, does Laguerre time, which is some kind of time transform rather than linear time. So it computes some kind of exponential or moving average, but it uses a Laguerre time instead of linear time, which is a pretty complex mathematical process. I'm not familiar with all the details, but that's what I can tell you about it for now. These are all the parameters of the Laguerre computation, and if we look down here, it basically it's also using, so the reason it's called plus DI is because it's using the usual Laguerre computation has the closing price here. Instead of using the closing price, they're using this function IADX to compute the average directional movement, and then this has certain inputs that are necessary, and they're using the high price, so it's the maximum price for the period, in order to do the computations. And so this is what the computation of the Laguerre looks like, and the DI, the plus DI, they're using something called the DI indicator line. So it is a component of the ADX, and it is used to measure the presence of an uptrend. So when the DI is sloping up, it means that the uptrend is getting stronger. So that's an overview of how the Laguerre RSI is working, and the main idea is that there's a threshold, and if you cross a threshold, the upwards of the threshold, which is computed in the Neuronirvaman function here. So if you're upwards of the threshold, then you signal to do a buy order, and if you're below a threshold, then you're trying to signal to do a sell order. So that's an overview of how the Laguerre quantifier works, and that's how the third perceptron is working. It's using two Laguerre quantifiers, and it's using two averaging periods, periods 3 and periods 4, and it's making a decision based on that. And that perceptron, if you remember, was responsible for learning whether it's a bullish or a bearish market. Okay, so then we go to the second perceptron, which is responsible for learning, let's go back to where it was. The second perceptron is responsible for learning short positions. So it uses a combination of the Laguerre, which we already went over, and something called a silver trend here. So this is wrong here, so I'm gonna take 1 second to fix it. There should be a silver trend indicator. So now we're gonna take a look at what the silver trend indicator does, and that's basically the same thing that the first perceptron does, even though the first perceptron is training to learn long positions. So really what the only difference is in the parameters that are passed to the functions. Okay, so let's do an overview of the silver trend indicator. So the silver trend indicator is it's a trading indicator. It follows a trend, and basically draws two colored lines. Here we have blue and red. So one line is for bullish action, the other one's for bearish action. And so when they cross, you use that. The indicator generates some signals, and you use those signals to decide whether you want to buy or sell. So these are the input parameters to the indicator. If we go down here, we can take a look at the alerts. So if value 1 is greater than value 2, so those are just values that are computed, that are a result of this process that I explained up here. And so you compare the two values. So if the blue line crosses the red line, you make a certain decision, and vice versa. Okay, so then we take a look, and we figure out based on these conditions whether we want to do a buy or a sell order. So once again, it's an indicator of whether you want to be buying or selling. So once those three values are computed, this is just another Laguerre indicator. This is wrapped inside of a function called tension, which is used in the perceptrons. So once you have those values, then you use the return values to make a decision whether you want to do a sell or a buy order. Let's take a look at the sequence diagram of all the stuff that we did. So basically, so let's go back to this, to the larger picture. So after we call the supervisor function, the supervisor function runs through the third perceptron, which is responsible for identifying the type of market. The second perceptron, which is responsible for identifying the short positions, and the first perceptron, which is responsible for identifying the long positions. So in the optimization for the expert advisor, you have to train all three of those separately. So this is described here in this optimization procedure. So you have three stages. In the first stage, you teach the first perceptron, and you set the value of the parameter passed to 1. In the second stage, you teach the second perceptron, and you set the value of the input parameter passed to 2. In the third stage, you teach the third perceptron, and you set the value of the input parameter to 3. Going back to this overview, we have the supervisor. It calls the 3 perceptrons, and then each perceptron returns uses a combination of perceptron 3 uses the Laguerre RSI plus DI, and the other 2 perceptrons use a combination of the Laguerre RSI and the silver trend to generate their recommendation whether you should do a buy or a sell order, and these are combined, and then the supervisor returns whether we should do a buy or a sell order based on the recommendations from each of the perceptrons that do the inner computations. Okay, so here's perceptron 3. This is the function iCustom, which basically through this function, which is a built-in function, we access the Laguerre indicator and the silver trend indicator that we're using. Then we do the second perceptron, which so this one's perceptron 3 only uses a Laguerre indicator. Perceptron 2 uses both a combination of the Laguerre and the silver trend indicator, and perceptron 1 does the same as perceptron 2. And then once we get the recommendation, then we either place a buy order or a sell order. So that's the overview of the Neuronirvaman code. Thanks for watching. Here's our contact information in case you have any questions.